Thank you, everyone, for coming out this morning. We appreciate your spending some time with us and coming out here to hear the panel. I think you're going to enjoy it very much, so listen up closely. We have a great distinguished panel up here. It's very timely that we have this discussion today. It's going to cover international trade, including opportunities and challenges for global success and some valuable tips and success out there. My name is Steve Weathers. I'm the president and CEO of the World Trade Center San Diego here, and I want to thank Rio and his team for inviting us to partner with this. As you probably know, San Diego Business Journal is the #1 business publication not only in San Diego and the surrounding regions, but in Southern California. And no, they don't pay me to say this, so I'm not a paid advertisement here. Actually, I think we pay them to advertise. Something's wrong with that. Anyway, no, they're a great publication. If you haven't already, make sure you, not during the panel, but later, you check your phone, because I've already got my daily business journal here on my phone. So I love paper, but it's great to get it electronically every single day and kind of stay up to speed with what's going on. Before I just introduce our panel briefly, their bios are in your packet, so I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to introduce them. But I do want to introduce at least a couple people here. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Kim Benson down here from Canes International. She's very shy, so I won't ask her to stand up. But Kim is on our board, on the executive committee, does a great job, is a great supporter of world trade and very engaged with us and goes way above and beyond as a volunteer board member, taking away from her day-to-day job. The other person I want to introduce, Keith Arnold over here. Keith is with our team, and some of you know Keith out there. We have a number of investor and partners and members in the audience, so I think all of you know Keith, and he does a wonderful job with us also. So again, if you haven't met them, please get to know them in the audience here. Okay, our panel very quickly here. Kok Chi Sim. That's right. I didn't call him Cochise. Some people do. Kok Chi Sim. He'll tell you about the story. There's a story there, okay? Managing Director, Senior Relations Executive for J.P. Morgan. Traveled all the way from Chicago just to see us today. So I think he came from one of the farthest distances. So thank you very much. Tracy Lewis Rindinelli. I did miss that. Rindinelli. Tracy also travels quite a bit, so she's here now, and she'll be on a plane later, so I appreciate you taking time to join us here. Western Regional International Director for UPS, and many people don't know, we have our very own inside UPS person that works for us, and Keith Arnold, who is one of the managers here, so Keith is one of those UPS guys in brown over there, so he knows the company very, very well. And last year, Tim Van Linge. You, it's no Joe Smiths on this panel. It's killing me. Tim Van Linge, Chief Financial Officer for LifeProof, and I think they make an interesting technology and product, and he'll tell you all about that. I know some of our panel members up here actually have engaged and have used this product before, so it's actually a great product to tell you all about. Please welcome the moderator for today's panel, Rio Carr, Executive Editor of the San Diego Business Journal. And Rio, I'm going to hand the mic over to you and take it away. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Steve, for your kind introduction and welcoming to the panelists. Good to have you here this morning. For those of you who've been in San Diego for a long time, you may recognize Steve. He's on his second trip through here. He was with the Economic Development Corporation, what was it, 12 years ago you left, Steve? About? And so he brings, he's traveled the country working in various community-based organizations. So he brings a lot of knowledge from other places, but he also knows San Diego very well. So we're delighted to have you back in San Diego, Steve, and thank you for welcoming us all and participating in today's event. We have three really very expert panelists this morning, and I'm delighted to see you all here to hear them. We always do a run-through of these events via telephone conference call before we do it, and the chemistry was very good with these three panelists the other day. So I'm anticipating we're going to have a very energetic and interesting panel, and we're going to focus on creating a global strategy for your company, where the growth is in emerging markets, some of the issues with doing business internationally, and the resources, and this is really the important thing, there's amazing resources available to companies going globally, as you'll hear from these panelists. So keep those in mind, and at the end of the day, this is all about you, and I will be circulating with a microphone to have you ask questions. I'll be asking some, but also there'll be a chance for you to ask questions. So please jot down your questions as you hear the speakers, and we'll get a chance to address them. I would like to thank our sponsors, Chase and UPS. Without them, we would not be able to do these, and they have as you know, both of them are global brands, and we're delighted to have them, and thanks also goes to the World Trade Center for their participation. And when you joined us this morning, you found at your seat a handout for today's event with bios, so we're not reading the bios on the panelists. Please review the very impressive background. I think you'll agree they're well prepared for today's talk. So without further ado, to get us going, it is my pleasure to welcome Kak-Chi Sim with J.P. Morgan. Kak-Chi? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So I don't have to tell you that I came all the way from China. Since I'm now living in Chicago, that would be even further. But and I have actually lived in China for a number of years, working there for J.P. Morgan. I like to start by asking a couple of questions, and you can show your answer by raising your hands. How many of you have already been selling your products or services outside of the United States? Quite a number. That's very good. Okay, next question. How many of you have 1/4 or more of your annual sales that are generated outside of the United States? That's pretty impressive. That's very good. Okay, so my first slide, hopefully this works. Oh. Technology. Yeah, I pushed the wrong button. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Good. Figured that one out. So every year, J.P. Morgan Chase does a survey of business leaders, which is CEOs and CFOs of middle market companies, and those are companies with annual sales between 20 million to 500 million. And two of the questions that we pose to those business leaders are, one, what percent of your total sales comes from overseas? And two, what percentage do you expect in 5 years' time? Back in 2011, only 24% of the respondents says that over 1/4 of their sales are from overseas. Earlier this year, 2 years later, that percentage have risen to 29%, who responded that over 1/4 of their sales are from overseas. And actually 12% says over half of their sales are from overseas. More importantly, more than half of the respondents says that they expect their global sales will become a significant part of their business in 5 years' time, by 2018. So, so what are some of the reasons middle market companies are becoming more global? In no particular order of importance, here are some reasons that are often cited by the CEOs and CFOs. The first is to pursue higher growth markets. And as I will share with you later in my presentation, overseas economies, particularly in the emerging markets, are growing much faster than here in the US. Another reason is diversify from the home country. And although the global economy is becoming more interconnected, there are still variations in growth between regions and between countries. And by selling overseas, US companies can avoid over-reliance on the domestic US economy. Another reason is follow major clients overseas. When I started my banking career 30 years ago, hardly any middle market companies will consider going overseas or going global. But nowadays, as the survey I showed you earlier, it is not surprising to find middle market companies generating more than half of their sales from international sources. And the majority of these companies are following their customers overseas. Take, for example, suppliers of the auto industries in the Midwest, suppliers to the fast food industry such as McDonald's and Yum's brand. Because of their customers are going global, they have no choice but to also follow them. And here in California, suppliers of the high-tech companies such as Apple and Hewlett-Packard are doing the same thing. Oh, sorry. And the other, in the early days of globalization, one of the most often cited reasons for going global is to reduce the cost of production. This is, however, becoming less important as wages and other cost factors in the emerging markets start to rise. Instead of the lower cost factor, more companies are now going overseas because of the pool of talents that they find outside of the United States. As many of you may have known already, China and India are producing large numbers of engineers, programmers, and IT professionals. And I think most importantly, the factor of innovation. And I oftentimes think of innovation as knowing, understanding what your customers want. And as companies try to sell globally, they find that simply by shipping products that are designed specifically for the US is not going to work. They need to know the local customers' needs, and they will need to be situated locally in each of the countries or regions to understand what the markets needs. And because of that, actually generate even more innovation from that process. Now, underlying many of these reasons for US companies to go global is the development of a major trend, and that is the rise of the emerging market consumer. This graph shows the share of global consumption from 1990 to 2012. Back in 2002, the US accounted for over 35% of global consumption, while the emerging markets accounted for only 22%. 10 years later, in 2012, no, I don't think it works. Okay, there's no pointer. The emerging market share has shot up to over 39%, while the US has dropped to just over 26%, as this graph shows. Now, of course, the US is still the largest as a single country, but the trend is quite obvious. And the rise of the middle class and the consumer in the emerging markets is what drives a lot of US companies to go global. A look at the growth rates of the various regions and countries around the world tend to support the argument of companies going global in order to achieve diversification. Even though countries and regions cannot avoid major impact of major events such as the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, when everybody's GDP growth dropped precipitously. Under more normal circumstances, they do grow at different rates and show some divergence. As we can see in 2011 and 2012, when Europe dropped while the US grew. Another point that this graph shows is the significant higher growth the emerging Asia, and in particular China, has in comparison to Europe and the US. Also, one thing that our economist is showing is that both China and emerging Asia is actually, the growth is slowing, and that is something that is also having some impact on the global economy. The good thing is the US and Eurozone is now starting to pick up again. So there's, again, the offsetting trends. And by going global, you can actually, the diversification impact is actually shown right here. To further illustrate this point, here are two charts showing the relative GDP of various emerging markets in 2012. The first chart looks at the global emerging markets, and here you see emerging Asia, I circled that in red, makes up more than 50% of 2012 GDP. And then within emerging Asia, the second chart on the right, China and India alone made up more than 70% of 2012 GDP, with China accounting for about 60% of that. And I may be stating the obvious, but this is to show you why everyone is now watching China's economy every day. Before 2008 financial crisis, the US has been the engine of growth for the global economy, contributing over 20% of global GDP growth. But since then, China's growth is what keeps everyone going, and accounting for 35 to 40% of global growth between 2011 and 2013. So the opportunities of going global is quite obvious, particularly in the emerging markets. But as my boss likes to say, you can never have a picnic without ants. And in my over 30 years helping middle market companies grow internationally, several major issues and challenges often comes up. And I have listed here some of the major financial and banking related issues, which we will cover in the Q&A, and I'm not going to go through them because of time. And so if you see any one of those that are interested, please ask a question. I'll let you kind of take a look over some of the issues. And these are the ones that I oftentimes, our clients ask me about. But if you have any others, please feel free to raise them. Now, so how global is San Diego? Unfortunately, there is no reliable statistics to show that. And so as a proxy, I used export, which is not the same as going global, but unfortunately is the only data I can find. According to a study done by UC San Diego, and that was published in May, although San Diego ranked 17th in total export value, in terms of export intensity, which is the percentage of export out of the gross metro production, it only ranked 55th. Now, according to the study, there are many opportunities for San Diego to become more global. Among those are the diversity of the population. 23% of San Diego's populations are immigrants, and many studies have shown that immigrant populations can contribute valuable knowledge, language skill, and the networking that are opportunities to develop even more international business. And then, of course, the highly talented, highly skilled talent. There are high-skilled talent that are developed, educated here in the San Diego region, many of whom has foreign language skill as well as comes from overseas. In terms of challenges, there are a couple, but I think I want to emphasize the one that is most often cited, and that is the inability of San Diego's companies to think global. And there are many reasons behind this inability, among which are lack of information, lack of professional and social networks, and the lack of service providers that can help San Diego companies become more global. Which brings us to this event today with a panel of professionals and service providers that can help you think more global. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Rio.
Thank you, Kak-Chi. Would you mind going back to that one slide on challenges for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to focus on that for a moment in our discussion at breakfast. Kak-Chi asked me to spend a few minutes on this, and so I wanted to give everybody a chance to see this because I think this is one of the payday slides you'll see today. If you're thinking about global trade for your company and you've done business primarily here in the U.S., here's a pretty good list of the things you're going to be facing as you move forward, and they're pretty daunting, like managing cash flow of a global supply chain, and Tim will be able to speak to that as a CFO. I think various regulatory and legal environments, I mean, these are all daunting things that a local business person often has trouble doing business in another state, let alone doing business in another country.
I think, again, one of the challenge that I often hear, and I'm repeating myself, and particularly for middle market companies, are they are entrepreneurs. They know very well their business, and they do very well selling their products and their services. But unfortunately, when you try to go global, there are a lot of complexities. I am only listing the financial and banking related challenges. I'm sure on the logistics side and then in the operational side, there are even more. And so it is impossible to do it on your own. And I always say the most important thing to recognize if you want to go global is to find help. And again, and don't just rely on one or two persons, because I always say, people always call me the China expert. I said, no, I'm not a China expert, because what I know now probably is going to be outdated tomorrow. And more importantly is I don't know everything. There are legal issues, there are tax issues that you need a lawyer and an accountant, and of course, on the operation side, even more challenges. So you do need multiple sources of professionals to help you along. And I think that's the most important thing, is to seek help. And actually, there are quite a few here. I mean, and of course, in the banking side, we can certainly help you, but on the logistics and the other areas, there are a lot of resources, even here in San Diego.
You know, we're disappointed, Kak-Chi, that you don't know everything. We were told that you did. So, you referenced just now the rate of change,
Right.
and even someone like you who spends his professional life in the area of international trade, you have obviously close affiliation with China, and you understand that economy pretty well. It's hard for you to keep up. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's coming so fast.
Well, it is very true. I always like to tell a story. Most of you may know of John Huntsman, or you may have forgotten about him. John Huntsman and he was one of the many Republican candidates during the last presidential race. Now, John Huntsman was ambassador to China, and he is a China expert of his own rights. You know, he speaks perfect Mandarin, lived in China for many years. But he often likes to remind people that the term China expert is an oxymoron, because anyone who claims to be an expert is a moron. A China expert is a moron. And the point he is trying to make is, again, as I said, things change very quickly. And just in the area of banking and finance, the rules literally change every month. I have a presentation on renminbi internationalization that I have to update every month because every month they make new changes. It's hard for me to keep up. And I am supposed to be the China expert, so imagine how you can keep up with that. It's very difficult. And then I'm just talking about one subject, and then you have the legal issues, the tax issues, and I don't even want to get there. So I always say, that's what I know, but get the right professional.
How often do you get to China?
Actually, I only do that once a year now, because the good thing about an organization like JP Morgan Chase is we have a lot of resources on the ground. Now, I do have a real night job because of the time difference. Almost every evening I have to talk to my colleagues in China to get an update on what's going on. But that's how I keep up. But for most other companies, yes, traveling, being there in person is very important. I have been traveling I don't know how many times to China, so I don't need to do that. So I use the modern technology of teleconferencing and all that to be able to keep up to date. But for most other companies, I would say, going there, if you are doing business with a country, you need to be there. Well, at least whoever is responsible for that country needs to be there very often.
All right. Thank you. I think we're ready for Tracy. Tracy Lewis Rendinelli from United Parcel Service, UPS. Tracy?
Good morning, and thanks for being here. I know you have a choice of where you could be this morning. I appreciate you being with us this morning. Kakshi opened up with the questions I normally ask, so thank you for that, Kakshi. There's only one other question that I want to ask by a show of hands. For those of you who are currently importing or exporting globally, how many of you are doing it to or from more than one country? Okay, very good. That's good. That's promising. Then you will probably teach me a few things today about it. But, at UPS, we love logistics. And it's not really just a tagline. I think that is probably the single best differentiator between us and everybody else who does what we do. And the reason why we love it is because we understand that when you're successful, we're successful. And flat out, that's what it's all about. So with that, I hope I do. There we go. So I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. You can look me up. Try to use the social media as much as I can because it is the wave of the future. And if you're not currently locked into it, I would suggest that you do because your customers from this point forward, virtually, that's how they're communicating right now. So I always put this up there and I remind you, if you're somebody like me who had to be dragged into the 21st century, you kind of have to embrace it because those are the people that want to buy from you. Okay, so a little shameless plug about UPS. I think there's a lot of things about us that people still don't know today. Started in 1907. We're a very, very old company. But the one thing that we understand about business, and the one constant in business today, is change. We do serve 6% of the U.S. GDP, 2% of the global GDP, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. Obviously, those in finance understand that because as the market goes, or as UPS goes, the market normally goes. And in some cases, that's great. In other cases, it's I think some people think that we're too big and we can't help. But I will tell you that my number one goal, and every UPSer that's in this room today, our number one goal is to help small business grow. Because that's where we understand our bread and butter is. So make no mistake about it. Yeah, we've got the Toyotas, the Toshibas, and the Apples of the world. But at the end of the day, this is where we want to impact business, and this is where business can be greatly impacted. We have more than 220 countries that we serve, 2.4 million packages and documents. The reason why I think this is important is because we have feet on the street in every country you're either going to now or you want to go to. So somebody like me does the same thing in Asia, in Latin America, and in Europe. So it is a UPS employee just like me who wants to help you grow your business. So I think Kakshi did a very good job of explaining that we can't know everything about a market unless you're there. And I think we understand that here in the US, things change so drastically in business that if you don't have feet on the street to help you understand the changes that are occurring locally, then you're a little bit behind the 8 ball from that perspective. So let's talk about the global GDP. So the US is a 15 trillion of that, and the world is 71.8 million. Okay? You don't have to be a math major to understand where the opportunity is for your company. So we're this much, and the world is this much. So the population, where does it reside? Again, you don't have to be a math major to understand. Your customers don't necessarily reside in the US, or you've already saturated them. They're already your customers. So if you want new customers, I think from a population standpoint, you understand that globally is where to go. So we talk a lot about direct-to-consumer because that is really the fastest growing market here in the US, especially for going globally. We kind of outline where the direct-to-consumer market growth is occurring, and it really is very, very similar to some of the slides that Kakshi presented to you this morning. If you take a look at Canada, obviously our largest trading partner for obvious reasons, but also you got to take a look at Australia, and there's some very unique things occurring in Australia that say that that is a market for you. For number one, if you're a seasonal company, and I mean seasonal winter, when it's winter here, it's summer there, and vice versa. If you're a seasonal company and you're not thinking about that part of the world, you're kind of missing out, and we can help you with that. And I think Kakshi did a great job of telling you, you're not alone in this. If it's our job to help you grow and we grow from your growth, then there's a lot of resources out there, feet on the street, if you will, that can help you understand that marketplace, how to go there, and how to market there, more importantly. Find your customers. Incomes. This slide is really probably one of the this slide and the next slide are two of the most important slides on this, because I think it's very telling about what's happening in the world. So basically what this is telling you is it's the years to double per capita GDP. So if you take a look at Europe, it took 154 years. Take a look at South Korea. Took 10 years to go what Europe took 154 to do. So again, this puts into perspective for you the opportunity for you and your business. It doesn't take the United States 53 years. It takes everywhere else a lot less than us. Again, the United Kingdom compared to the year span population at the start of the growth period. How long did it take Europe and the US to get to where they're at versus all the emerging markets in the world? So this is some very good information for you to understand where your opportunity lies. And then let's talk about consumption. And I'm not going to belabor this because I think Kakshi did a great job of illustrating that the emerging market consumption is a $30 trillion opportunity for you. And 2025 is not that far away. You know, I remember talking with my friends in elementary school about where we would be in the year 2010 and how things would be, Jetsons, you know, obviously. And here I am in 2013, not quite where I thought we would be, but you know, when you're young, you have these grandiose ideas of how the world is going to be. But again, emerging markets are where the GDP growth is going to come from. So if you're not looking at them now and you don't have a strategy to attack that now, then we can help you with that. You have a lot of experts here. You have a lot of resources out there that you may or may not be aware of that can help you build that strategy so that you can capitalize on this consumption. This puts it into perspective. This is Shenzhen in 1980. Now, mind you, 1980, right? My hair was much bigger, I can assure you. My makeup was much darker. But this looks like us when? Like in the early 1900s, maybe? That's Shenzhen today. Big difference. This is the opportunity. That screams opportunity. So I kind of want to bring it home with something that is very, very, something that you can relate to. Because I know we're talking a lot of numbers. I'm not really a numbers person, believe me. But this helped me understand a perspective. So is Dubai an emerging market? It is, right? Sure. Sure. They have a lot of money too, so that's very good. How about Nairobi, Africa? Cape Town, South Africa? Johannesburg? I mean, all these places that you might not think are emerging markets really are. So did you know that by 2025, the GDP of Tianjin is like adding another Chicago? Just the city of Chicago. So the magnitude of that growth there is like India's top 3 cities will be like adding another Dallas and Houston. Kind of gives you a little bit more perspective. The combined GDP of Sao Paulo and Rio will exceed that of New York today. And then by 2025, Istanbul will have 1.5 times the GDP of Boston. So if you take a look at all the opportunity and you take a look at it in terms of what we can really wrap our heads around here, the opportunity is already saturated in all those domestic places we mentioned. The opportunity resides outside the U.S. borders. Thank you.
I think one of the questions that you touched on at the very beginning is, and this goes for both Chase and UPS, is that you are global brands, but you're also giant companies. And often those of us who run small businesses or mid-sized businesses think, no way, this isn't going to work. Culturally, I don't know how to access the resources. They're not interested in me. I'm too little. Okay, Kokchi is shaking his head. Tracy, can you talk a little bit about that and how you interface with small and mid-sized businesses? And then Kokchi, I'd like to hear from you as well.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of businesses have this perspective as well. We are a very big company, and I get that. But we are kind of segmented into what we deem enterprise accounts, and then middle market, we call it. And middle market spans everything from the mom and pop shipping 1 package a week to Life Proof that does, millions and millions of dollars of sales. So what we like to think of is, first of all, the enterprise group is a separate segment for us. We have a whole half of our business that's dedicated to helping you grow. You are the backbone of UPS. I've got people in here. Barbara Wilson is a marketing manager for us, and all she focuses on is on small business. Small business through associations, small business for mom and pop shipping 1 package a week. Every customer needs to grow and needs to grow globally, and it's our job to help you get there. So it is overwhelming. I get that. It's overwhelming. It's scary. There's a lot of risk involved, but there's also a lot of resources that can help you put that growth strategy together, determine where you should be focusing your efforts, where you're getting the most return on your investment. But more importantly, where you have feet on the street to help you really understand. And Kakshi, he said something that's very important. You don't want to go to a market if you're not really familiar with their culture. And for me, and I think my co-panelists will agree, in order to really understand that culture, you've got to go stay there. You've got to go meet the people. And unlike the US, much of business is done with relationships. You know, a handshake is great. It's good to meet somebody, and yeah, we're going to do business because we have these contracts and all that stuff. And that's not a bad way to do it. It's not that way the rest of the world. I mean, there are some legalities involved, and you certainly want to protect yourself, but it's really done on relationships. So when you start to venture out globally, you've really got to investigate for yourself, because there's nothing like a real world feel for the culture, to understand how people are going to buy your product or service.
Coach, would you like to comment about that? And then I want to come back to this issue of understanding the international markets. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the same here with JP Morgan Chase. We actually dedicated special resources to the middle market. In fact, I only cover the middle market here in the West Coast. And my colleagues here are all dedicated to the middle market. And as I already told you, our middle market is defined companies from 20 million to 500 million in sales. When I was in China, I deal with the big companies too. But when I came back here to the US, I know the middle market companies, as I also illustrated on my slide, has the biggest potential for growth globally. And because, again, I love the entrepreneurship, small companies actually are even better adapted to the global economy, because you make decisions quickly. You can do things much faster. You can adapt to the changes that I talk about even faster. Big companies cannot. They have a lot of bureaucracies. Of course, the negative or the weakness of a middle market company is that and Tracy has already mentioned, is the resources. You know, you don't have the hundreds and thousands of people. It's like the GEs and the GM has to focus on China itself. But you have help, and that's, you can get help. And that's what I think the combination of your flexibility as a small company with the help of global companies like UPS and JP Morgan Chase can really be very powerful. And I think I just want to make, I think, and that's the reason why I'm very happy actually dealing with just middle market companies and not the large companies.
Well, I want, Tracy talked a lot about direct-to-consumer markets, and you illustrated very nicely how these markets are growing. So it is conceivable that a company in San Diego would be fielding sales via the internet for direct-to-consumer delivery, and in fact, I think the gentleman sitting to your right has done this.
Yes.
That would be you, Tim. So we're going to hear a little bit about this and what this is about. But in going back to your point that as a company, I need to know the markets, right, that I'm dealing with. Well, I venture to ask Tim how many markets he's dealing with internationally. It's impossible for a small company to know the markets the way that a big company does with all the resources that are there. So it's almost, it seems to me logically that it's almost essential, if you're a little tiny company, you better hook up with the biggest ones in the world if you want to do business globally. That's
Right. Well, you want to be very focused about where you go. And, you know, we work very much with the Department of Commerce. And what I like about the Department of Commerce, it is the one arm of the government that actually works for you. You already pay through your taxes of what they do, but they have some very valuable information that can help you decide, number one, where is your product highly desired in the world? It helps you do some marketing reconnaissance, if you will, that determines how you want to market to those particular customers. It can hook you up with a supplier relationship if need be. On that side, on the UPS side, you know, we have have warehouse and we call it forwarding and distribution all over the world. So you may not want to distribute from the U.S. You may want to have a little piece of a warehouse in Asia, India, maybe China, maybe Brazil, where you don't want to have a whole factory or a warehouse, but you just want to house your goods in one little area, and you want somebody else to do the pick, pack, and ship, so that all you're doing is you're shipping a container, hopefully, or maybe a pallet, maybe just a few packages direct to consumer. But if you want to do that, you have companies like us that can help you do that. We have the warehouses, we have the free trade zones. We can help you capitalize on the free trade zones, and that's a whole nother debate that we can have here about how to utilize a free trade zone. But there's a lot of things that you can do from here that don't force you to make the capital investment abroad until your return on your investment warrants the capital investment. And really, that's the goal. We can help you be smarter about how you're distributing, because sometimes distributing direct from the U.S. to all of your customers in one particular part of the world is not the best way to go. Maybe you have a lot of customers in a very concentrated area and you want to go locally. So you do one big shipment to a distribution warehouse and you allow somebody else to do the pick, pack, and ship for you. That's some of the things that we can do to help you become global without having that the cost of the footprint. And I'm sure that Tim is going to talk about the cost of the footprint, because you have to have a very focused and detailed strategy when you want to have that global footprint, when you want to start to manufacture and do all those things abroad. You have to have a very focused strategy in order to get that done and capitalize on that return on investment. But you know, so many resources. I mean, I literally could go on and on about what's available to you to help you get to where you want to be. The first thing that you need to do is make a phone call or make the decision that this is what you're going to do, and then be committed to it through the process.
And I think it's worth mentioning or asking you, are these affordable for small and mid-sized businesses?
Absolutely. They're directed towards you. The government gets it as well. You know, our president has the National Export Initiative, and he's looking to grow exports by $5 billion. So that's their job, is to focus on the small business, just like it's our job to focus on the small business or the middle market.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Now we're going to have a presentation from a gentleman who represents a company that's been there and done that. One of, I think, the most interesting companies in San Diego. Was started, what, 7 or 8 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years. 3 years ago.
3 ago, 2010.
Okay, and it was just sold for $350 million. It's every entrepreneur's dream. Some of you may use the light-proof case. Does anybody here use a light-proof case? Yeah, okay, there's a few of them in the audience. You can see it in the photograph there. Their first cases were built for iPhones. I've had several. They're fabulous and really protect your phone. They have had explosive growth internationally, and so here's a guy who's had Tim is the CFO of Lightproof, and he's had to work in the environment and use the kind of resources you've heard today. So here's somebody who's done it. Please welcome Tim Van Lynch with Lightproof.
No, it doesn't fit. There just went my act. It's all right. It's all over. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. And I'll try to make this brief, because pretty much everything that Coachy and Tracy have said, I'm going to just reiterate that. But I will start off with a brief history about Lightproof. So who is Lightproof? Well, in a nutshell, Lightproof manufactures and markets waterproof, shockproof, dirtproof, and snowproof. Always forget the fourth proof. Snowproof protective cases for iPhones, Galaxy cases, iPads, etc. don't know if you can read that, but a brief timeline on the company. So the company was formed in 2010. First products were launched July of 2011, and that was the iPhone 4 case. iPhone 4 cases were launched with, you can see it below, Best Buy was our launch partner, and primarily that was our main channel through the first 5 months of the company shipping product. In that 5 months in 2011, did $12 million of sales and $1 million of EBITDA for that 5-month period. In 2012, the goal was to expand the product line. So the iPad started shipping in August of 2012. And of course, the iPhone 5, announced by Apple, started shipping in September. We had our case in November of 2012. Also, I don't have it up there, but the iPod Touch also began shipping in 2012. From a distribution perspective, we've expanded into other retailers and carriers. So AT&T, Sprint, Target, Radio Shack, Walmart, Amazon, etc. We began selling the product in 2012. So in 2012, we did $162 million of revenue and $44 million of EBITDA, and became the number 2 by market share case manufacturer in the world, behind that little guy down there at OtterBox. As a result of obviously that skyrocketing, and OtterBox, of course, they fessed up to this now, right after they bought us, that LifeProof, they estimated LifeProof would have 75% of the waterproof protective case market within 3 years, and they pretty much said they would go out of business if they hadn't acquired us. So they approached us in February of this year about an acquisition, and that deal did close May of 2013 for $350 million. Keep in mind, the business was capitalized with $2 million investment. So just do the math on the return on investment. But here in 2013, it's a great deal for OtterBox. We expanded in Verizon and Apple stores in April. And we launched the iPad mini and Galaxy S3 cases just recently here in July. So far this year, we've done over $200 million of revenue year to date, and we're on pace to do more than $400 million this year and about $120 million of EBITDA. So that's the growth so far. This slide just kind of shows, this is the company strategy, and the slide I just went through before kind of illustrates that. Number one, the main strategy was expand sales channels. We did that domestically, expanded into Verizon, AT&T, major retailers, etc. The second was expand the product portfolio. We did that with obviously going to tablets, with the iPad, also iPhone 4, iPhone 5, and now with Samsung and Galaxy. The third main point down there, obviously is the main reason we're here today, is to establish an international presence. And that's kind of where we are right now. This is kind of an eye chart, but essentially the protective case or the smartphone market is growing. So on the left, that top chart is the Apple and Android smartphone sales per IDC. It's on a 66% compound annual growth rate estimated from 2011 to 2016. And in 2013, I think it's estimated that 700 million smartphones will be sold worldwide of Apple or Android phones, and that will grow to 1 billion by 2016. The bottom chart are tablet sales, so it's iPad and Android tablets. That's growing at 128% annually, and in 2013, over 140 million are expected to be shipped, of which 90 million are iPads. And by 2016, that's supposed to grow to over 250 million tablets, just in that year, by the way.
And these are per annum sales.
Per annum sales, yeah, sorry, it's not cumulative,
Yeah.
exactly. The graph on the right are the distribution by geographical region in the world. And in 2013, and again, I think some of the other slides we saw earlier, only 20% of that sales are expected in the United States, and the other 80% are expected outside the United States. So simplistically, 4 out of every 5 smartphones are sold outside the United States. So why does LifeProof want to expand internationally? I think it's pretty evident. The pie chart on the left are the 2012 life-proof gross sales by region. That big giant blue one is North America, which basically 9 out of 10 life-proof sales were within the United States in 2012, 94% to be exact. So obviously there's a 4x opportunity to get outside the United States for those numbers. So that 400 million I talked about could be 1.6 billion that quickly. But, you know, that's kind of the history. So one of the things that we did, that strategy was late 2012, we were putting together a 2013 plan, and you know, we were looking at this data and said, we've got to go international. So to kind of, you know, mirror a lot, there were several factors to take a look at. You know, one, there's, you know, U.S., international, and VAT taxes that you have to think about if you're going to go international. You know, so how you're going to structure your organization, how would you structure your organization to maximize your tax efficiency in the U.S., but also you want to minimize your tax outside the U.S., right? You know, also, do you have the resources in-house to deal with VAT compliance in all these countries, especially in Europe? Every country is different. Every threshold is different. It's very, very cumbersome. The second one is kind of related, local audit and compliance filings. You know, do you have the resources in country to support a financial audit? I mean, unlike in the United States, internationally, most countries require you to file audited financial statements with their taxing authorities. And so you have to have, you know, audit capability, audit firm in country, whichever countries you're establishing a presence in, to audit your books. You have to keep your books in those countries. You're going to have resources in country to, you know, accounting, finance, etc., to support that. So that's another thing to consider as you go international. The other thing is local employment and corporate law. Again, this comes back to the first one, how you structure your organization. You're going to need in-country experts who are going to be able to tell you what's the right way to structure your organization. Employment law, especially again in Europe, can be very daunting. It's not like in the United States. Every country is different. You know, for an example, in the Netherlands, everybody has to have an employment contract. In France, forget it. You hire them, you'll have them forever. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that you just need to know, and you need guidance, you know, locally to be able to do that. You have to figure out banking, merchant, foreign currency. You know, again, some countries require you to have a bank account. This is my favorite. Some require you to have a bank account to establish a company, but you can't establish a company without a bank account. So go figure that one out. This is where you need to have smart bankers to help you with sorting through that kind of thing. You know, there's also, obviously, merchant. You have to deal with foreign currency. Are you going to sell in local currency or not? For an example, LifeProof, you know, was selling everything in U.S. dollars. Most small companies do. They don't want to deal with the currency hedging. They don't want to deal with trying to deal with merchant accounts in foreign currencies. We are just now, you know, branching that out. We're finally going to be launching local currency in Europe, so we will have euro pricing, except euros, very soon here in Europe, as well as Great British pounds for the UK. And of course, then the last consideration is, you know, there's the operational and logistics side of this, which has to do with, again, you know, how are you going to fulfill your customers' orders in country? Are you going to use somebody like a UPS? Or are you going to try to find a more local company? Are you going to have a warehouse there? Are you not going to have a warehouse there? Are you going to fulfill from the United States? You know, all these factors come into play, and they all relate. And the biggest thing has to do with, you know, all these items. The key is balance, because not any one of these things has more importance than the other. And I'll give you an example. We established our European headquarters in the Netherlands, which is not the most business-friendly country to be in. And I'm Dutch, you know? And I'll tell you that it's not the most business-friendly country. This was the country that you had to have the bank account before you could set the corporation up. This is a country that requires you to have employment contracts for every employee you hire. However, there was a business reason to go in there. It wasn't the most tax efficient. You know, It had very daunting employment, corporate law, but there was a business reason, and we had a major distribution partner who was headquartered in Amsterdam, and so it made sense from a business perspective to be there. So that's, you know, I guess the key I'm trying to say is you have to balance all these factors when you're going international. It's not just any one thing. And you can't do it alone. So, you know, like I said, international, U.S. international, VAT tax issues, local compliance. So what, you know, what did LifeProof do? So, you know, we partnered up with a Big Four accounting firm who could provide us tax advice, help us with a tax structure, help us with, provide, you know, local offices who could handle the audit functions. And, you know, they had that expertise, so we certainly didn't have it. And I wasn't gonna go off and hire a small firm in, you know, Dublin to do it. It would make more sense to partner with a big firm that had worldwide exposure because it wasn't just Dublin. So, you know, what we did was we established a subsidiary in Ireland for our worldwide kind of international hub. Why? Because Ireland has a 12% tax rate versus 35 in the United States. They're also very business friendly. There's a lot of tax credits. Certain positions, if you bring in high-tech positions in Ireland, they'll even give you a check for 25% of those salaries directly from the Irish government. So there's definitely a lot of incentives to do that. On the local employment corporate law, same thing. You have to have in-country legal experts. You know, the U.S. firms, no offense to anyone's lawyer out there, the U.S. firms will tell you that they know all the international law. I'll tell you that they don't. So you need to have in-country legal experts who can advise you on the laws in those countries. Same thing on the banking, merchant, foreign currency. You know, you can do it. You can go out. You can find a local bank in Amsterdam. You can find a local bank in London. You can find a local bank in Hong Kong. But now you're going to have to deal with 3 or 4 or 5 different you know, partners. It's a lot easier to partner up with a global banking partner who has those capabilities, who has branches. They have that. You're dealing with one kind of one-stop shopping, and that's what we did. No shameless plug for Chase, but that's who we use. And same thing on the operational logistics. You know, you need to find logistics providers that have international capabilities. Do warehouse, they help you with duties compliance, they help you with some of the VAT issues on importation. Again, you can't do this all by yourself. You're going to need experts who are going to help you with this. And in the middle is you. So don't forget that just because you hire all these people, there's a lot of work that has to happen within your own organization. What we did internally, when we kicked this off in December of last year, we call it the ITF, or the International Task Force, internally, which was a cross-functional group of people from every part of the company. So we had people from accounting, from HR, from legal, from facilities, you know, IT, logistics, etc. And we worked through all this. I mean, one of the other things we had to do, which I didn't put up here, is we had to upgrade our ERP system to handle international, to handle multi-currency, to handle multiple consolidations. And these are all things that you have to think about as well. So kind of in a nutshell, so what did we end up doing? Well, we created our, as I said, our main international hub is in Dublin, Ireland. We created LifeProof International Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary of our U.S. company. We also formed LifeProof Europe BV in the Netherlands, that I talked about, which is our European sales headquarters. And we created LifeProof APAC Limited in Hong Kong to be our headquarters for Asia Pacific. Long term, the plan was to also establish entities in Japan and potentially Korea, Australia, and in South America. We were looking at Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. We haven't quite got there yet, but that's the long-range plan. We also put a distribution center in London, and we have one in Hong Kong, and of course one in the United States. So to Tracy's point, we don't fulfill orders directly from the U.S. to, say, customers in Germany. We ship product directly into our warehouse. It's not our warehouse, it's a third-party logistics partner's warehouse in the UK, and then we do both direct B2C customer fulfillment as well as B2B fulfillment from those warehouses. And, you know, I was laughing when Kuchi put this slide up earlier. It's in the CFO playbook that you're supposed to tell you 20% of your business comes now and 50% comes international later, which is what I've done on here. So, as I said, in 2012, we had 6% of our revenues international. Hey, look at that, the goal in 2013 is 20%. And by 2017, 2016, it's expected to be roughly a 50-50 split. The tax people love that too because it justifies the cost of the tax thing. And I think that was it. Yeah.
I first encountered LifeProof. This is Tim's phone. It is for sale, cheap if you'd like it. And Tim was dunking it in the water, if you couldn't see earlier. And I think the first time I ever saw you was at Harry's, and you were doing this. Was it you that was doing this into a bucket of water at Harry's restaurant?
I think that was Gary, but
Yeah. Okay. But these things work, and there's a brand new iPhone 5 in here, and pretty cool. There you go. Thank you. It's a little wet. Tim, you touched on all these logistical issues. Did you also have any compliance issues with your product itself in Europe, for example? Did they want you to test or approve or meet hurdles? Because you're making claims, and many countries have requirements that if you make a claim, you have to verify it.
right.
So did you have to go to England and personally drop this into a bucket of water to
I didn't get a London vacation, so no. But one of the things that did come up in Europe, as an example, is our standard warranty in the United States was 1 year, but in Europe it has to be 2 years. So we did have to change and kind of regionalize some of our terms and conditions. Another big thing I didn't put on there is, you know, something as simple as localization. You need to do your packaging in foreign languages. Believe it or not everybody in the world speaks English or reads English. You know, it's kind of an arrogant American thing, but it does sell better if you have your packaging in local languages as well as a website. So another thing we did internally was a massive effort to update all of our packaging, update all of our websites to be in foreign languages as well.
As I recall, it is possible to go onto a LifeProof website and order direct. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you were doing the consumer direct concept that Tracy talked about.
Correct. We do B2C. We've been doing it from the very beginning, and about 10% of our sales are on direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you do that? How do you make that work?
Well, we use UPS. I mean, no shameless plug, but we have a third-party logistics partner who handles the warehousing for us. And as I mentioned, we have a warehouse in Dallas, but they use UPS for the shipping. They do the pack and get it all ready to go and ship it out. It's pretty simple here in the U.S. In Europe, the same company has a warehouse in the UK, and they do the pick and pack for us and ship it, again, within the country. One of the big differences I discovered when OtterBox acquired us is what OtterBox does is they fulfill direct from the United States to customers in Europe. Now, from the company's perspective, that's a lot cheaper, right? Because now the customer has to pay the import duties, and they have to pay all the VAT up front on that item because they're the importer of record. But the company's not paying that because they're not shipping it into the country. Big surprise, OtterBox's sales in Europe are pretty dismal, where ours are significantly higher because we do take that step of importing it into our warehouse in the UK and fulfill from there. So that's one of those trade-offs where sometimes up front you may have to front the cost, but in the back end you're going to get it by a better customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it is conceivable that Kakchi's cousin in China could order on the web and you could deliver to him today, and that would come through your Hong Kong facility. Is that correct?
That's correct. Our Hong Kong facility would ship to China.
So you can literally deliver virtually anywhere in the world.
That's correct.
I didn't see a presence in South America.
We do ship. We don't have a physical presence there, but we do ship B2C there. Most of the South America is fulfilled from the United States right now.
But you do have sales.
We do have sales. We do have a lot of B2C sales. I actually saw the list yesterday, and there was like 90-something countries on the list of where we have sold since we began selling product.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Thank you, Tim. It's your turn. I'm going to come down among you. And if you'll raise your hand, I'll come around, and please stand and tell us your name and your affiliation and direct your question.
Yeah, I'm Brian with Leapfrog Industries, and we're a very small company. As far as emerging markets and European as opposed to Asia, economically, the U.S. is just now starting to come out of the economic downturn that we've had. And Europe, at least all the news reports they're still getting hit hard. Usually, based on my research, U.S. is the lead in all of those terms. So as a small business that wants to branch into an international local market, would it be wise to us to kind of look into riding that wave out until things start to emerge? Because I'm assuming that Asia is lagging behind Europe on that. So Asia is starting to really start to get the blunt out of that too. So on projection wise, do I even look at the Asian market, economically speaking, or do I kind of wait the ride out?
I thought we'd start you off with an easy question.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, and I am not an economist, I'm a banker, but so I'll pretend to be an economist. Actually, what you just described is probably 10, 20 years ago. So the U.S., as some of my graphs demonstrate that. The U.S. usually leads the economic recovery, Europe comes next, and then Asia follows. Things have not been the same since, I would say, since the last 5 years, 10 years. In fact, during the last cycle, which is, since 2008, when the US and everybody else went into the tank, Asia was the one who actually is propping up everybody. Yes, Asia also have significant decline, but China in particular pumped a lot of money, easy money into the economy, and as a result, China during 2009, 10, and maybe even into 11 was the one that is leading everybody. And if you talk to my colleagues in Brazil, Latin America, what are they watching? It used to be, particularly the commodities business, commodities country like Australia and Brazil, they always look at the US as the leading indicator. They no longer look at the US, they look at China. All my colleagues in Brazil are saying, well, this year is not going to be a good one. Why? China is slowing down. So again, things have changed so much that what we assume was the norm is no longer the norm. Now, having said that, because China is slowing down a bit, that has an impact. And Europe, as you say, is actually picking up. Now, assuming everything being equal, and you are looking at all the opportunities, I am a contrarian. I always look at where where the economy is weakest and say this is the opportunity for you to go in. So to your point, if you are looking at, and again, everything being equal, you're just picking where you think you can get the best deal to enter a region or economy, yeah, Europe probably is the best place to go because it's probably going to pick up. China is slowing down, but I think, again, just like buying stocks, you don't want to time, you don't want to just be, a trader, what you call that, the frequent traders. You want to invest in the long term. So you really need to look at the trends too. And what I try to illustrate in my slides are that in the longer term, emerging markets, and we are talking about the economy that hasn't been developed, will grow faster than the developed countries, including Europe. But that's just looking at the economy. You have to look at your products, your service, and what some products don't fit into the emerging markets. They actually fit very well in the developed world, and so they will be focusing on the Europe and the Australia, and they will never pay attention to India or China because of the product characteristics. So, you know, you cannot generalize, but if, again, like I said, everything being equal, in the longer term, the emerging market's going to grow faster, and there will be the opportunity. In the shorter term, yeah, Europe probably is a good opportunity because it will start to grow again. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
All right, we have a question right here. Did you have a question? Would you like to stand?
Do you have international patent protection for your products? And if you don't, how are you going to keep people from, say, China just simply copying your products?
So yeah, we do have international patent protection, but I'll tell you for a fact that counterfeits is a huge problem for us, and most of them coming out of China. And we have a department within our legal group, which is a brand enforcement group, and they spend all day scouring the internet looking for those products, and you'll find a lot of them on eBay primarily, and Amazon as well. And they spend, you know, countless hours doing training with the U.S. Customs as well to intercept a lot of these products as they come into the U.S. And they do stings, believe it or not. There's a big deal. We have all hands meetings every Tuesday, and the brand enforcement team gets up there and they'll talk about who they busted this week, and they go on raids with the customs service, and it is a big deal. But the reason that we do it is because we're trying to protect our brand, and we're trying to protect our retailers, because it's a way of protecting the MSRP. Because if you don't do that, you're going to erode your MSRP really quick.
Just a quick follow-up. You're talking about brand, which is trademark. But I'm asking a different question.
Well, I'm talking about counterfeits.
I'm talking about, well, for that could be trademark, but I'm talking about someone who wants to, in China, for example, wants to manufacture, not using your brand, but just copying the product, putting their own brand on it.
Right.
What steps have you taken to prevent that from occurring?
Well, like I said, that's exactly what we're doing. So we're going out and raiding these retailers and these small businesses that are selling these counterfeit products. Because you can't.
Sell them in China.
Yeah, in China as well. We do raids in China as well. But I can tell you that obviously enforcing a patent in China is not going to happen from the legal perspective. It's going to come from the practical going after the people selling it. I hate to use the analogy, but it's almost like the war on drugs. You know, you've got to go after those suppliers and to get it off the market.
Tim, just for reference, how many people do you have employed in that endeavor, in your brand?
We have 10 people full-time, and that's all they do.
All in the U.S., or are they other places in the world?
As of right now, they're all in the U.S., but they do work with investigators in foreign countries. So
they're interfacing with foreign enforcement groups, and do they have to then travel when they do raids and that sort of thing?
That's correct. So they work a lot with the customs services in each individual country. They also work with brand enforcement investigators in those countries as well. We just recently got into China and started raiding factories in China. Yeah, another big thing too, and this is sometimes, to keep in mind when you're doing business international and you have international suppliers, you do sometimes have leaks from your suppliers. And we've intercepted, the customs actually intercepted real product manufactured by one of our manufacturers in Alaska that was being sent to an unauthorized retailer or reseller in the United States. So those are also issues you have to deal with, our leakage from your supply chain.
All right, question, David?
But primarily, the design was done here, and then Gary went to China and found a manufacturer who was willing to work with us to manufacture it. To your point, that's exactly what happened. We took the innovation there, and then they manufactured it for us.
So, I think, excuse me, Kakti, I think, David, perhaps you're talking about a little different dynamic. In your case, Tim, you design here, you build in a foreign market, and then you ship globally. What if you design a business model here, essentially, take it to a foreign market, and it stays in that market? For example, building supplies that David creates. That just, they create it there and they use it in that market. So that's a wholly different circumstance, and that's really what you're talking about. That's not your model, but it's a model that both the bank and UPS must encounter, right? Where we just do the intellectual property here in the U.S. and everything else is done overseas.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of clients, what we call the ideas clients, you know, the architects, the designers. And in fact, because of the local requirements as well as I said, you have to, not so much the requirements, I actually just forget about that. It's really, the requirement is not regulatory requirements, more oftentimes it's the customer's requirements, that you have to do that locally, and then, so you actually have people on the ground working with your clients in the country to design the products or the service, and then deploy right there. Now, so what is the U.S. contributing? It's the whole process. It's the organization. You know, again, I look at the architectural firm and design firm. They have a way of doing things, a culture that's unique, that you cannot find anywhere else but here in the United States, which is developed here in the United States, and then they can use that model, that concept, that culture anywhere in the world, and actually prove very successful. But to the delivery of the product or the service, it has to be done locally. Does that answer the question? I mean, there are different models, and so, you know, the Apple light-proof model of design in California, assembled in China. That's what Apple always put on their box, is one model. And then, you know, I think your model probably is more, you are exporting a way of doing things, a way of organization, and this a customer relationship way of doing things that is very unique and which has proven to be successful. So it depends on the product, the service, and the model. And the most important thing for small business is understand what makes you successful, and that's how. And this making sure that is applicable and then adaptable to each of the countries that you're doing business in.
But really, at the end of the day, all of the rules apply that we've talked about, the IP rules, making sure that, like the gentleman sitting next to you is involved, if there's a patent necessary, and protecting the intellectual property is really what you need. It's still a service that you're selling abroad. It is considered an export. It is still considered an export.
Absolutely.
So understanding the market, trying to find buyers for your idea, or implementers, if you will, of your idea. And it's probably going to be somebody different. You're going to have a buyer of the idea and somebody else is going to implement. And you're going to have to oversee that whole process. The supply chain is really the same. The only difference is it's an idea or an intellectual property versus a good, my glasses, if you will, or life-proof cases. So everything still applies. The help from everything that Kakchi talked about to what Tim talked about, and everything in the middle is still essential for you in order to create that supply chain for yourself.
Yeah.
So how you're going to sell it, you know, do you need the capital in order to sell it? Do you need the capital to export your idea, if you will?
Yeah.
All of that stays the same. So you're still, everything still applies to you. The only difference is I don't get to ship it because it's an idea. I might get to ship it over, you know, when it becomes a reality, over at wherever you're selling it to. But we still can join you up with buyers of your idea, if you will.
And the other thing, and because I live in the Midwest and manufacturing is always an issue, and I hope it's not here so much, you know, where, you know, manufacturing creates jobs and all that. But I always remind people, where's the money made? I just looked at an article recently about Apple. Their profit margin is 33%, and I'm sure you are too. Because the idea is what makes money. It's not the assembly. China can, you know, I remember the premier of China complaining that they made less than $1 on each iPhone that they made. Well, that's the point. It doesn't add much value in the manufacturing process. It's the idea that makes money.
Right.
And would you rather make that dollar or the 30% gross margin that Apple makes? I would rather make the 33%.
All right, our last question. Here's a manufacturer. Okay, so
Perfect timing. My name is Rick Urban. I'm with Quality Control Manufacturing. We're in aerospace manufacturing, so we add more than a dollar. So anyway, this question is actually from a former life when I worked for a motorcycle manufacturer that we took it from, it was all domestic and then it went 80% international. And what, did you look at joint venturing, franchising as possible, structure in order to solve some of the issues that you had when you looked at expanding? And then also, did you look at, and did you have a need for using like Export Bank or any of those type of things through the U.S. Department of Commerce?
That was for Tim, right?
Yeah. We didn't do a joint venture, but for Europe, we did sign a kind of a master distribution agreement with Belkin, believe it or not. So one of our competitors. And the reason we did that was to quickly have a sales force ready to go and shelf space with the retailers in Europe. We could have built it ourselves, but it would have taken a whole year to hire people to get the shelf space, et cetera, with the retailers. And we wanted, our plan was to do over $50 million of sales in Europe this year. Keep in mind, we did about $1.5 million last year. So that was a pretty steep goal to try to achieve. And while we didn't go the joint venture route, we did do a pseudo joint venture with signing a master distribution agreement with Belkin and basically have access to their sales channel. So that's kind of what we did. For Europe, for Asia Pacific, we're kind of doing it on our own. We've Belkin, of course, offered their services for there, but we said, you know what, we're not going to tie up all of our worldwide distribution with one customer. So we kept Asia for ourselves, and we're building that out on our own.
Cool. All right, let's have a round of applause for our expert panel.